Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. So if you're just getting this now, and usually I drop this early in the morning or at least late morning, the reason that I didn't is because I was able to get to an event with the monks on their peace walk, and it was definitely worth it if you get to go and hear them speak and listen to the cadence of their voice and to inspire us. Today, I'm going to incorporate two things because we are remembering Martin Luther King today and his peace mission and his desire to change the world by how we walk through the world and how we handle conflict. So this morning, I listened to a sermon by Reverend William Barber, who was talking about the sermons that Martin Luther King gave. And if you have not heard that yet, I'm going to drop the link in the show page so that you can listen to that. It was amazing and uplifting and full of purpose for us, not giving preachers or any of us any kind of permission to sit on our buttocks and just be angry all the time. And after that, I got myself ready and went up to High Point to be a part of, I don't know how many people. It was thousands of people. The stadium was full, circling all the way around. People were all the way back to the walls, in some of the places behind the stadium seats. And it was just the most calm, respectful, well, almost respectful. There's always those, but it was very calm. People followed directions. They listened. They gave way when people needed to get past. It was just a beautiful experience. And what the one monk had to say was just beautiful. So I gave the title of this episode Purpose and Peace because I want to talk a little bit about having a purpose. Being gay with God usually just means that, we have a right to still have a relationship with the God of our understanding and that we can claim the word God and no one can take that away from us. The other purpose about walking through this earth gay with God is that we also have a purpose in speaking the truth about what's happening right here and right now in our country. One of the quotes that Reverend Barber used was, "If you're not troubled, what's wrong with you?" And I thought that was brilliant because he reminded us that Jesus was somewhat troubled when he was ready to take that final, prayer in the Gethsemane garden, and that there was a troubled heart in him, and that does not dismiss his divinity. It doesn't dismiss his mission. It didn't dismiss whether or not he was willing to do it, but he was troubled because, the work wasn't quite done yet. It was left to be done in the cross, but it was more than that. There were so many things that hadn't really been completely worked through in the brief 3 years that he was doing his ministry. So William Barber gave us permission today to be troubled with what is wrong and what's going wrong right now in our world. Never before have I seen Congress and the Democrats be so polarized. And it made sense in Reverend Barber's sermon today that part of that comes from the way everything was set up for this new regime, that when we can pit ourselves against each other, black against white, gay with straight, you know, all of the different disparities that they're trying to put on people of color and all the minorities, when we can pit ourselves against each other and we're all fighting for the same crumb, so to speak, my words, not his, but when we're all kind of fighting for the same crumb, division becomes so wide that the chaos creates in itself a path forward for ugliness and bitterness and distrust and all the things that we're experiencing now. So their chaos, they're pitting us against each other, not being able to trust each other, all of that is working in this regime's favor. Reverend Barber also talked about that it's time to love forward together. That was such a beautiful statement. And the way he unpacked that was to say, basically, we're always talking about, well, you don't want this out of the Republicans, or you don't want that, or they're going to do this to you. Well, what if we changed the script and we started saying to someone, let's love forward together? Do you love feeding children who are starving? Do you love helping the elderly? Do you love giving women, your wife, your grandma, your daughter, the right that they have over their own bodies? Do you love that? And if we can love forward together, talking about the things that we all can agree on, instead of polarizing ourselves and saying we can't listen to anything the Republicans say because it's all against what I believe, and the Republicans do the same thing. But both aisles can agree that we don't want to kill children. We don't want children to die because they don't have the right health care. We don't want our wives to die during childbirth, or our grandmothers and mothers die of breast cancer because they can't afford their insurance. If we look at what we both can agree on and love together, love forward together. And he's actually thinking about doing this whole Love Forward Together rallies all over the place, and that we would be in charge of our own community and get a rally together to go forward together. I don't know how that will look exactly. I'll leave that up to Reverend Barber, but I think it sounds exactly like what we need. In this world today, there is so much exhaustion and hate and anger. And the thing is that William Barber, when he was talking about preaching and the kind of sermons that we need to be doing, he suggested that we not play in the pulpit. And to a lay preacher's ears, I love that, because when I preach, I want to preach on the truth, and I want to inspire, and I want to lead people through the gospel that is very clear about how we treat each other. And so, if we're going to be a voice for the God of our understanding, we need to remember that we can't mince words and act like everything's just fine. And we can't continue to just give in to our exhaustion in the moment. We all have used the words, I'm just tired. I'm tired of all of it. I'm just tired. I can't deal with it anymore. And yet, if we're not dealing with our own situations and dealing with what's happening in the world today, then nothing will change. We have to find a kinder, gentler way to walk through the world, but still have that urgency and that purpose of being troubled and not letting that go until we continue to work on something that's going to make it better for everyone. A lot of times people say, well, you just have to compromise. I'm not against compromising unless that compromise does not save lives and does not feed people and does not respect all the minorities. I want the compromise to be like, okay, so we may have to give you this, but then we'll give you that. And, I know there's going to still be some backdoor bargaining in the Congress, but we've always been able to come to a resolution together, a bipartisan resolution that would serve the people that need to be served. Now, is it perfect? No. And I don't know if it ever will be perfect, because it I just don't even know how I would do that, but that's why I'm not a politician. But I am a child of God. And I do know that when you decide that you're going to do something and you're troubled and you want to fix whatever it is, a voice of love is going to go a lot further than a voice of hate. And being able to sit at the table with people who may disagree with you and you may disagree with them, but there's always usually something that we can put ourselves together and find that common goal. It's going to take a lot of work right now. It really is, to get the two aisles and our neighbors and our community to begin to come back to a table and trust again. But I'm leaving that up to God. All I have to do is not get in the pulpit and act like everything's okay, or not, be in the world and act like everything's okay. Continuing to put the truth out there in a way that we can love forward is going to be absolutely brilliant once we figure it out. So I'm saying that because in the talk today that one of the monks gave, he talked about mindfulness, he talked about breathing, and he talked about being super present. He said a lot about the cell phones that we use, and he named them your lover and talked about how sometimes in the middle of the night you can't go to bed with your husband or your wife because you're with your lover, meaning that you're on your phone, you're scrolling, you're doing your social media. He talked about having to take your lover to the bathroom. And that we're always multitasking and we can't ever just do one thing. We're always doing multiple things, and that our phones keep us up at night. We need to disconnect them, he says, for an hour before we go to bed. And I've always known that. Not that I've done it, but I've always known that, because your brain has to start to wind down. I told parents that all the time as a counselor, because I worked with a lot of kids with hyperactivity, and their brains stayed so focused and they got into hyper focus, especially around social media and devices. And I would really encourage parents to shut off the television, shut off the cell phones and the games and all of that an hour before. Lower the lights if you can, maybe put on some soft music, maybe do some reading with your child, and really just kind of do a wind down bedroom routine. Well, that's good for us too, by the way. That's good for us too. So, the monks were trying to really help us be present and be in the moment, and remember how just breathing in and out and keeping a count, in one, out two, in two, out two, in three, out three, and continue to do those breaths and then keep building the number. And that's how you get in the moment of just breathing one and also staying present. Being mindful of how much time you spend staying jazzed up on social media and on things that are troubling you. And it's okay to be troubled, but it's not okay to continue to create a cesspool around yourself without any break. That's the point. That we have to find the times in between the jazzed up, anger that we have, and find a way to decompress that a little bit and then get to the work of finding peace. And it is kind of work to find peace. I know that doesn't sound right, but we can't just jump into peace. We have to make a plan, basically. And by work, I'm talking about making a plan, plan times to decompress throughout the day. If you have a job that's 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day and you got to be at it all the time, I get that. But if you get a lunch break, if you get a little bit of break during the day, breathe. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Make sure that you find that time either before you head out on the day or before you go to bed, that you just find some time to decompress. It's going to be important for us moving forward, especially until all of this chaos in the White House is still going on. It's going to be difficult to find those times to disconnect. I know we're hypervigilant and we want to have information because it's powerful, and we don't want to get blindsided and have the world come to an end and we're over there breathing. However, if we're not finding the time to breathe, if we're not finding the time to decompress and love the people that we desperately want to love, then this world is going to continue to die, and it's going to continue to make us feel sick. I also learned today that perspective is everything, that we get to decide what we put our attention on, what we're troubled about, what we're feeling upset about, and how far do we take it. I'm going to tell you a little story about my getting to the venue. Most of you who know me really well know that I'm directionally illiterate, and that's why I decided to go to the lunchtime venue instead of this evening in Greensboro that was going to be at night at a place that I had never been before. And so I went to the lunchtime venue. When I was pulling in to the parking area, there were cars everywhere. People were walking. I mean, it was already a mass of people on the sidewalks, in the street, getting to the venue, cars coming and going. And so I pulled into the parking lot behind another car who had to wait for another car to get into their parking space. And so I was, a little bit nervous about being out in the street a little bit and couldn't quite get all the way up into the parking area where I thought I could get, but she stopped suddenly, and so I had to stop suddenly. Well, when she finally was able to go around that other car and get moving, I started to move, and I followed her exactly, I thought, the way she went, but I hit something. And I got stuck on something, and you could see everybody's face go, "Oh my God." And so I was trying to back up, and then and this one guy just, kept pushing me back and, telling me, go backwards, go backwards. So I went backwards, and there was a horrible sound. And I rolled down my window and I said, "What did I hit?" And he said, "It's the guardrail wire." Well, I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I learned quickly that when I did park my truck and I got out of my truck and went to the passenger side, I now have a huge problem on my door. Part of it, I think, is kind of bent backwards. I haven't looked at it too much because I didn't want to have that picture in my head before I came on to do this episode. But when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's bad." And I just walked away from the car, and I started to follow the mass. And this one lady said, "Were you the one that, were you the one that hit that?" And I said, "Yes, I was." And she said, she goes, "That's a hit and run." And I laughed and she laughed. And I said, "Are you going to be my lawyer when I take that to court?" And she said, "You're handling this very well." And I said, "Well," I said, "I heard a great sermon this morning from William Barber, and, and I'm here with the monks and I wanted to see them. And so I said, I can't do anything about it." Now, this is nothing like Midge, okay? Usually, Midge would be just mad at myself, overwhelmed, upset, don't know what to do about it. Well, there's nothing to do about it right now. I will do something about it, but there's nothing to do about it right now. And for some reason, I was just completely unaffected. Maybe I disassociated, I don't know, but I was completely unaffected by what had happened. So I continue on, and we're joking and laughing about some stuff, and I'm getting to the venue. And I just was able to take the moment that I had designated to be a peaceful time in my day, and I just focused on that. Now, there were some rude people there. It didn't all work out the way they planned. I mean, we were there for a very, very long time, and part of that was because when they do get to a venue, they only eat one meal a day, and it's, I guess, lunch. And so they were taking the time to rest and to eat. And it's like the whole entire venue, thousands of people were like just okay with it. Just okay with it. And I got to meet several other people that I didn't know, that we had wonderful conversations, and the amount of peace that was in that space was just incredible. So I want us to remember that no matter what dumpster fire is going on in the White House, however it will affect us negatively. I can promise you that I'm going to be dropping some money on the damage to my truck because it's a major damage. However, it is what it is, and I will fix it. And I'm still okay. And everything was wonderful today. When I look back at today, I'm not going to be dwelling on what happened to my truck, which is also not necessarily like me. But I don't feel connected to that point in my day. It was one thing. Everything else, from the sermon that I heard this morning and the presence of the monks and being able to talk with new people and listen to their stories, and it was just a beautiful day. So let's practice focusing on the moment. And if it's a negative moment, give it space and then release it. Breathe through it and give yourself permission to find joy in every single day as often as you can. Expand your ability to take care of yourself by breathing, by doing one thing at a time as often as you can, instead of multitasking every single moment of your day. Spend time with yourself. Spend time with those you love. Spend time in silence. Thank you, everybody, for waiting for me to post this evening. And thank you for always being great supporters. I will be putting Dr. Barber's sermon into the show notes today at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. I hope that you will find the time or make the time to give that a listen, because it is a beautiful, beautiful sermon, and he gets fired up, and so does the congregation, and it's kind of really cool to listen to because my congregation doesn't do that, and I don't either usually, but it was very beautiful and definitely worth the listen. Next week, I will be doing another episode for you, hopefully in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I'll be taping an author that I can't wait for you to meet. He has a memoir that he has written, and I think that you'll enjoy it. So I will be posting that the Monday after. But just stay tuned, and you'll be able to figure out when all that's going to happen. Check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. If you need support in your faith journey, your coming out, or just resilience in general during these difficult times, you can get a complimentary session with me, totally free, and we can just talk about what you may need to work on. And if you decide to continue coaching with me, we'll figure out how to get you on my schedule. You can find that link also to the complimentary session on the episode show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. Also, if you'd like a copy of my memoir, Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story, you can get that link on the show page, and also you can get it at my website for a signed copy at gaywithgod.com. If you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you are gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.